Chess Baku Grand Prix being played from October 1st, October 15th, 2014. Great world-class players, one of the qualifying tournaments for the World Championship for next year. Here are the standings after round 3 in the Baku Grand Prix 2014 qualification tournament leading up to the World Championship played next year in 2015. Gelfand is in the sole lead, winning a game where he flagged Grishuk, Caruana, Svidler, Nakamura, all tied at 2. Rajabov, Kazimjanov, Tomaszewski, Karjakin, all at 1.5. Grishuk, Dominguez, and Mamedyarov at 1. And finally Andrakin with a 0.5 point. He got a draw today, his first points. Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Another game from round 3 of the FIDE Grand Prix from Baku 2014. Qualifying tournament for the candidates final for the World Championship next year in 2015. We got two great players here. Sergei Karjakin, one of the top players in the world, prodigy, one of the youngest GMs ever. Playing for Russia, formerly playing for Ukraine. And Leonard Dominguez from Cuba, playing black, another top player. I like Lanier a lot. He's a really good guy. Anyway, folks, Karjakin's white, Dominguez is black. Let's get to it. Looks like somewhat, I'll call it a ready for lack of a better term. C6. Got my Fritz computer on off screen. Basically even game. A lot of these queen pawn games end up, they seem boring, but they're not. They end up all hell breaking loose in the late middle game. So maybe I'm usually an E4 player myself, but I run into so many Sicilians that I'm gonna start playing D4, I think, and go from there. I'm not familiar with it. I'm gonna be playing a big tournament in Las Vegas in a couple of days. I live in New York in the Northeast United States. The Millionaire Chess. Maybe I'll start my D4. We'll see. Knight hit the bishop. Wants to keep the bishop. He goes to E6, which doesn't really matter if that pawn here, because this dark squared bishop's already developed. So not moving the pawn here isn't that big of a deal. And that's a nice setup for black, I think. Queen to C2. The other knight comes to get developed. Good spot for that knight. One thing I don't like is, and it'll probably change later, is this poor light squared bishop doesn't have anywhere to go. F4. Bishop G4. Now it's a space for him to go. Rook to defend the E-pawn. E6. That pretty much seals in that light squared bishop. E4. Knight takes, D takes, queen takes. Bishop F6 hitting the knight. Knight goes back to F3. And of course that was all planned out. He saw he could chase that knight off. That way the bishop can get away by recapturing. And then the queen takes. White has the bishop pair. I don't see any great advantage here for either side. It's about even game. We'll see how this develops. Queen A5. Looking at the computer before that move, knight to B6 is the computer's choice, and I kind of like that, or queen to C7. Go knight to B6. There's a lot of good squares to go to here. Here. I like that a lot. He goes queen A5 instead for Dominguez. Bishop E3 just to get the bishop out, connect your rooks. Knight B6. Kind of did the reverse order than I was thinking, but that's without the queen being out there. Bishop comes back. Interesting. And that's one of the choices on the computer, actually the top choice. The top 3 moves are all almost exactly the same in score. Bishop F2. A4, queen E2, bishop back, rook A D8 just developing. And this is an interesting move here. A3 is a choice of the computer. I think a lot of reasons for that is it releases this rook to move. He doesn't have to babysit this pawn anymore. He decides to go G4, which is interesting. That might have been the most accurate move, but I kind of like it. Knight C4. That's a good spot for that knight too. Actually, if he goes to kick it, to kick the knight, I think here is a good spot for that knight. Maybe threatening here later. Rook to E2, defending the pawn. Knight to D6, that's a good spot for that knight. For a lot of reasons. One, it's a central square. Controls a lot of key squares. Here, here, and here. But also he's on a dark square. And that dark square bishop can't really get to him right now. If the knight had gone back to B6 instead, and then H4, I like that a little bit better for white. So knight to D6 was the best move. H4 anyway. Now it's an interesting move, and it's the correct move, but it opens up the king position a little bit. H5. So what do? Do you take? Do you push G5? He decides to take. And then queen takes instead. Pawn takes would be a disaster. Because now you've got this open file here. This pawn will be isolated. That's a good move. Queen takes, G takes. Now the queen's off the board. That isolated pawn, that open file, isn't the end of the world. But you're going to see later, this poor dark squared bishop gets in a jam. King to H2. Looks like he's preparing to move rook here. With a discovery here. King to G7. Bishop F3, going after the isolated pawn. Now he goes rook to H8. This puts black on a little bit on the defensive. That rook's going to have to babysit that pawn now. And not having a light squared bishop makes it 10 times harder to defend that isolated pawn on the G file for black. A4. King F8. I think he wants to bring the king up to here. Bring this rook over maybe. We'll have to see how that works out. A5. Now he's cramping down on black. Black can't release himself now at B5. A6. King H3. He's bringing the king up. King G7 is the move, but who's going to move back? Maybe that wasn't a great plan for Dominguez, but he's not going to move back. He takes one of the computer moves, which is knight to F5. That knight's not so easily driven away. Rook over. Rook D7. B4. Right now, maybe a third of a pawn advantage for white. It's not so easy to play this for black, I don't think. I think it's much easier to play for white, but this is the problem in positions like this, at least it is for me. How do you develop a plan in such a strange position? Now this white king is frozen here because the knight and the bishop are both hitting it. And he's almost in the same predicament here. His bishop is tied down in the defense of that pawn. So he goes king to G7. He does go G7. C4. You go rook to G1 instead. Then king to H6. After C4, knight takes the pawn. Rook E to D2. Now, is he going to lose this? Of course not. Rook H to D8. Now, instead of knight taking the pawn, if he had taken with a bishop instead, rook over, rook, bishop B4, and that's winning for white. Game's over. So he took with the correct piece. Rook, rook, bishop takes. He has to give up that pawn. King F8. Small advantage for white, nothing spectacular, but the only difference now is this pawn here got some potential of giving black some grief. Bishop G4, just to freeze that E pawn for for black. King comes over. H5. Now this is where I think Dominguez stumbles. And it's a natural move, but it makes it ugly. He plays knight to F5, and immediately the points jump up over 2-point advantage for white, 2 1/4. Now, we're on move 35. And I'm not so sure, I'm not sure on the times in this game if Dominguez was in time trouble or not. He should have played knight to C2. Then after rook takes, I think black's okay. But he played knight to F5. And he played rook takes, king takes, and bishop takes, and then pawn takes. Now, the game essentially right now is over, believe it or not. It's almost a 2.5-point advantage. It's over a 3-point advantage now the computer's playing for white. I think, according to the computer, bishop here. But still, you're down a piece. Now he goes H6. How is he going to stop that pawn? King to E8. Bishop C5, cutting off the king. Bishop H8. I mean, what else could he do? And then king to H4. And that's where Linear Dominguez from Cuba resigns. Tough break in the end there. I think he was a little defensive towards the end. But these top players, you make that one false move, and everything just disintegrates. And you can see why he resigned. King here. He can't save this pawn. Eventually he's going to bring the bishop around to challenge this bishop. It's just doomed. The white king is going to get in no matter what. Tough break for Linear. Anyway, folks, that's another game from round 3. I hope you enjoyed it. I want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Look at that. That's beautiful. It's got to be one of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you.